Good evening, nearly good evening. Good afternoon, everybody. Look at that. That's what happens when a consummate professional's on in the afternoon. You go bang on time, absolutely bang on time. And I'm on the wrong side, so not a consummate professional, but the professional's professional, as we used to say here. I am joined this afternoon by the legend, the man, the myth, Willie Irwin. How are we doing?
I know this is like my third time in like 24 hours. I feel like he's pushing the boundaries in my free time here, Martin. He really is.
Yeah, that semi-retirement that you talk about just isn't happening, is it? You're just here all the time now.
He just keeps messaging me. It's like I've actually muted him on WhatsApp so that he can't message me for the rest of the day.
Well, he shouldn't, because he's now... Well, I think he's away. Is he not going somewhere? I don't know. But anyway, he's having his day off. This is supposed to be his day off. But I used him to my advantage because I didn't set this up and made him do it. It's, his pod. He can do it.
Absolutely.
If anyone was watching last night's wrestling show, you know that Lisa, his missus, has now outed him and said that his eyebrows have been done. So there we go. But we are here today. Don't forget, this is the afternoon rabble. There was no morning rabble because Martin has Fridays off. If you do have any questions in there to ask, don't forget to just put the Q there so we know that it's a question and not just a general comment. Everyone's in that. They would Sniper, I saw you being cheeky at the start as well with this one. Lyndon just waiting to type 12:32. Well, I took it away from him. He's not having it. So we are going to go through what we can, because obviously it's international break while we wait for the return of proper football. And a source close to the channel, and when I say source close to the channel, I mean Martin, has given us that title of the owners keeping a close eye on Martin because the rumour is they're not happy with it, Willie. And to be fair, they sit in the same boat as quite a lot of us in that sense.
Yeah, look, I think it's fair to say it's been a disappointing start to the season in some ways. I think getting to the playoff round of the Champions League is where we thought we could get to. We knew whoever we drew at that point, it was going to be extremely difficult, clearly. But the manner of how we get knocked out was as bad as I've ever felt after a game in a long, long time, to be honest. In terms of the league so far, we just don't look like scoring a lot of goals, and we just give up too many chances. So, yeah, look, I'm sure privately there is discussions have been had with the manager, Kevin Felwell, Patrick Stewart, but a lot of those will be kept private. Whereas in public, they'll obviously come out and say they're backing the manager. He's fine. He's not under any pressure. But the reality is, at a club like Rangers, you're always under pressure, whether you're winning games, drawing games, or losing games, because that's very much the nature of the job, isn't it? Like, you never really get away from that pressurised environment.
I mean, legendary manager that was Walter Smith, the amount of supporters buses I've been on the way back, the style of play was crap. He's got to go. He's useless. He's only got one way of playing. Even back then, yeah, we were in the middle of winning 9 championships in a row at that point. And we were one game away from a Champions League final and all sorts going back then. So every manager gets it, but Russell Martin is not helping himself with comments like, yeah, we're not scoring a lot of goals, but we've had the most shots in the league, even when we hadn't had most shots in the league.
I think he should probably have picked his moment to maybe throw that one out there at a better time, rather than we'd only scored 3 goals in 4 games and we didn't really look like scoring in some of those games. So I think possibly there's a time and a place to say things like that, and I'm not too sure that was the best time for him to throw that one out there.
To throw it off the back of an firm game where you've had 0 shots on target probably was not the best time. But it is what it is. We'll see. We talked about it, me and Martin, on Wednesday when I was on with him, and said that, the furore of it all's died down. That it's still there. It's just died down, but it's not as vocal. But see, when we come back next weekend, if we lose, or even if we go 1-0 down in the first 5 minutes,
yeah, and I think that's the fear, mate. You're absolutely right. I mean, at the end of the day, we're playing against a Hearts team that are also playing... Well, they're maybe not playing great, but they're playing well because they're winning games. And obviously, as a manager, if you're winning games, there is a degree of confidence. Maybe even if you're not playing that well to a point, like, you're still kind of growing your confidence. Hearts have obviously recruited massively over the summer. I think they've got like the biggest squad in Scottish football at the moment with the amount of players that they've still got there. Obviously, this new way of signing players has obviously come into effect now. They're signing players from all over the world. Some of them I genuinely had never heard of before in my life, but reportedly they've obviously broke their transfer record to sign a player there just before the deadline for over £1 million. So, yeah, you certainly can't look by that fixture. And then obviously the week after that, you've got Hibs in the Cup. So it's two really difficult games. The manager's going to come under massive amounts of pressure. More so the fact both games are at Ibrox, mate, which obviously just intensifies everything because, as you've already said, you lose a goal in those early stages. The crowd won't take much to get angry or frustrated by it, given they probably are before they walk in the stadium. So it certainly doesn't take much for that to just tip over the edge. And so we really need two really good performances, 2 wins to build some confidence ahead of a really busy period between now and the end of the year, really, with Europe, the League Cup and the league games.
Yeah, back to Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, which is a bit of a bugger. I wanted us to get into the Champions League for no other reason that I didn't have to shift the wrestling shows about when we do the scheduling. But we'll have to figure something out for that later on. But yeah, he's got to come and hit the ground running for a second time. He's got to try and hit the ground running because if he doesn't, it'll be hell to pay. But as somebody is in there said that the constant negativity is getting boring. It is getting boring. So as we don't actually have to talk about Rangers because they're not playing, let's just get into some of the questions. First of all, go with this one because Brian does like a football top. And mine, this one, if you don't recognise the sponsor, this is the AFC Richmond shirt from Ted Lasso. I wanted one and I took ages to find one. It's not exactly bang on, but it'll do. The Chinese do some good stuff. Multiple Man wants to know where all these rumours come from. As far as I know, there's Martin because he tells me, and then I rely on you.
I think it's just Martin's head. Yeah, I think it's just Martin's head most of the time, to be honest with you. And I think sometimes he puts the things out on YouTube as though it's like a big thing. But once you actually can understand what he's actually said, you realise it's not.
Yeah, he does. He is in contact with some very into the know people at the club people, but whether they share all the information with him. But that was just what Martin told me, that owners keeping an eye on him because whether he's talking about himself, maybe they're not happy with him as opposed to Russell Martin. I don't know.
You wouldn't be surprised, would you?
And then Singing the Blues. Have you had any info about the news that Daniel Levy may join our board as a non-executive role? Well, that, to me, he is the first I've heard of it, because I'm not sure he's really even got his chair cold at Spurs yet. So, and I don't think he's actually officially left as of yet. He's still in there.
I know he was linked with Rangers back in the day, wasn't he? I think was it maybe the late 90s, early thousands? There was talk that his company were looking to invest. I mean, look, see the interesting thing with Levy. I mean, he's obviously somebody that splits opinion, isn't he? He's somebody that, a bit like some of the people we've had at Rangers over the years in charge. But when you look at what the man's done, he's built a brand new, very modern stadium that sort of does everything, really. The stadium capacity's grown massively. They have a very, very talented squad. They've recently just won a European trophy. They've appointed, in my opinion, a very, very good manager. And, the club's in a far better place now than what it was when he took over. But yeah, again, a lot of people will still say, well, he didn't spend enough money. He spent too much money building the stadium. So I think, in all honesty, being a football owner or a football chief exec or a director of football, it's one of those jobs that you truly never get the credit for what you really do. And it's a bit of a thankless task. And after, 25 years of doing the job, you can totally understand why he maybe just wants to step away from the limelight and just have a normal life, because clearly with the level of wealth that he's got, he could easily disappear to somewhere very, very nice and never be seen again and live a pretty comfortable lifestyle.
I mean, yeah, he could. He's done good things with Spurs. He's taken them to the Champions League. They had a hell of a run. He's had some amazing transfers go into the club. But equally, if you leave now, your legacy right now is, I managed to get you to a Europa League final. We won it, but staved off relegation with a couple of games. And that shouldn't be happening. Well, we say it shouldn't be happening to a club like Spurs, but it can, because back in the day, you wouldn't have thought Nottingham Forest would have been relegated to the Premier League. You wouldn't have. There's other clubs that have done it, and clubs that have gone down have continued to go down, and you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with like Oldham. I mean, Oldham were a Premier League football club when I grew up. Now they're like
we're in the first ever Premier League.
Yeah. So, and this is the thing, and you're absolutely spot on to point out. Like, you can always find the negatives amongst the positives. You can find it vice versa, and that's very much true. And I think at the moment, as some of the the comments are being brought up as well. Yeah, I think at the moment it is always easier to be negative than positive, but that's just, I think that's the nature of social media in a lot of ways. I think people struggle to find positives, and I understand why. But my outlook in life has always been to try and be as positive as you can possibly be. But I mean, right now, given how we're playing, that's not easy. And I think, unfortunately, the negative headlines sell more than what the positive ones do. And that's why when you look at most of what you see on social media, most of what you see on YouTube, most of the comments, whether that's Rangers, Celtic, Aberdeen, etc., a lot of the negative stuff is the stuff that sells, isn't it? So that's that's very much the nature of how the world is now.
Yeah, from a paper point of view, they love it when everything goes wrong, because then they can pump that out there, and the people will buy the papers. And particularly down here, they still buy the papers. Up, I know in Scotland, it's a fairly big split between who does and who doesn't, depending on what colour shirt you're wearing that day. But we're into the international break. It started. Wales have played. I think. I don't know. Not sure if any of the other home nations have played. I know Wales have played. But we have got players away on international duty, one of which last night was Nico Raskin, but it was Liechtenstein they were playing. So, as we said just before we come on, we weren't expecting him to be part of it. He had 0 minutes, so therefore 0 shots and 0 assists. So his season continues in the same vein.
Yeah, look, and that's the thing. I think sometimes when you look at some of these fixtures, whether they're international friendlies or they're competitive, I think at times you are going to look to rotate the squad. And it's no disrespect to the opposition, but Belgium should be able to rotate their squad, shouldn't they? In those type of games, still win the game, and then obviously heading into a potentially more difficult second game. That's when you maybe have your strongest 11 on the pitch and when you need to be better. I mean, a bit like Miovski last night. I mean, obviously when you see the level of opposition, you sort of think, well, are they going to start him? Obviously they didn't. So yeah, I think you take some of these things with a pinch of salt, don't you? Like, you don't really take maybe too much notice of them. Clearly, when you're playing the competitive games, which are really important in terms of you're up against a good standard opposition, then you do probably play your best 11 in most of those competitions. However, last night, when you look at Belgium and you look at the friendly with North Macedonia, I think it's fair to say that you don't necessarily think maybe that Nico or Miovski would have started either of those games.
No, because the smaller teams, you want to save them for the bigger games. It is World Cup qualifiers. I think all those teams would have enough to get by who they're playing. I'm just looking to... there's a sniper saying that Ant-Man came on for Norway in the second half, and they won their win against Finland last night. I'm just trying to see when he came on and how long he got. There we go. Norway, he came on... No, Asgard came on. Asgard came on for Norway, my apologies. For their 1-0 win, he came on just in the 46th minute. And then, so Asgard and Ant-Man played against each other, which was nice, and they didn't hurt each other, which is lovely.
That's always a bonus if they come back and they're no injured, to be fair.
And I don't see Ant-Man's name there. Well, Asgard played anyway, so that's fine. Tonight we've got Scotland playing Denmark as well. Tonight I think there's a watch along for it. I'm not entirely sure, not confirmed or whatever yet, but keep an eye out because it may happen. Alex and Connor were talking about it. We had talked about it a little bit more last night. We're just waiting to see what's going on with the boys.
Yeah, I think the interesting one with Scotland tonight is, even though Liam Kelly's not played a lot of football, you wonder if he's potentially the sort of guy that might start tonight, because when you look at the Scotland goalkeepers, none of them are really playing particularly well, and some of them are not playing at all. So it'll be very interesting to see who starts in goals for Scotland tonight, because you would imagine... I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it, when you look at the players in the squad and the ones that he's selected, who's missed out, etc. I think it will be strange to see how he sets up tonight in a lot of ways, especially with Tierney and Ralston dropping out as well. I'm not saying Ralston might have started, but you wouldn't be surprised to see maybe a few changes back there. I don't know. Like it's weird when I watch international football. I don't get the same enjoyment out of it. Like I do watch the games. Don't get me wrong. To a point, I might watch like 30 minutes or 45 minutes of a game, then turn it over and watch something else. And obviously, I want the Rangers players to do well. However, at the end of the day, when you look at like tonight's game for Scotland, my biggest fear is that if the Rangers players do start, I don't want them to come off injured. You know, that's like the biggest concern I've always got in a lot of these games. Same way if Asgard's away or Miovski or Raskan or anybody else that has been called up, even at academy level. Like, you don't want guys coming back and then they're missing 4, 6, 8 weeks, because I think that's a frustration for a lot of football fans, that when players go on international duty and come back injured, isn't it?
It is. And the under 21s are on tonight as well. Are they on tonight as well?
I think there's quite a few games up over the weekend. I think the 19s play tomorrow as well. And then obviously you've got some other nations as well that we've got guys away with. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting kind of run of games. You just hope, as I say, everybody comes back injury-free and ready to go for the return of the Rangers games. Scotland
under 21s in their European Championship qualifier against the Czech Republic away from home tonight. So,
a good chance. Hopefully, Finlay Curtis gets a game. You know, you would imagine Finlay must be in with a shout of starting, which would be great for him. Because at the end of the day, Finlay, I would imagine, is probably slightly disappointed that he's maybe not had more chances, you would say, so far this season. He's come off the bench more than not. So I would like to think Finlay's got a really good chance of starting tonight for the Scotland under 21s. And then obviously, like the Scotland under 19s, we've got like 4 or 5 guys away with that group. And I think it's 3 away with the under 17s. Obviously, Josh is away with Wales. So yeah, we've got quite a few guys away there playing, which is really good. And hopefully they'll get some minutes in the legs ahead of returning for other games.
I would expect Curtis to play, because every time he has, bar one game, he's come on the pitch and scored. So I would expect he would get a game tonight. And obviously the Northern Ireland played last night as well and won 3-1 against Luxembourg. So good win for them. One player who is fresh in the door, who we haven't seen yet, apart from a quick little interview, is Derek Cornelius, who will be playing for Canada tonight in a friendly. He will be playing Romania, so you can go and watch that. Have a look at the old boy that used to play for us in Yanis Hadji, who now has a club in Turkey, and see how he goes against our new man in defence, Cornelius. I might actually try to look at that just to see Cornelius, because I don't know a great deal. I know he played for Malmo when Cholak scored the double at Ibrox to knock us out the Champions League that season. But apart from that game, I don't really remember him then. I've never really seen him play, so I might have a little look just to see what he's all about.
No, 100%. I mean, that's one of the benefits of these international breaks. If you've just signed somebody, this is possibly the first chance you'll get to actually view them in action. It was interesting. I saw a couple of comments yesterday saying that, obviously, if he starts, who plays next to him? Because if you're going to play Cornelius, you would imagine the fact he's come in from Marseille, he's going to start. So if he's going to play in that left centre-back position, do we go to a 5? Or does that mean that either somebody like Giga drops out, or does Suter drop out the team? Because if you're going to continue with a back 4, then clearly, if this guy's come in and he's been given assurances that he's going to play, it will be interesting to see which one of the two all kind of drops out, because obviously in the main, sort of Giga and Suter have been the main centre-back pairing so far this year.
And that's what Bruno Sparky's alluding to, saying who are your 2 starting centre-backs now that we have the 4 in De Giga, Suter, Fernandes and Cornelius. There's been a little bit of a chat going on in there. You got Sniper, who's now had a go apparently, but he's chucked that in before he did, saying that Cornelius and Soapy would be his 2 choices. I can see that working, because I think Martin alluded to it that Suter does tend to play better when he's got experience next to him, because he isn't the one to talk you through a game, but he's quite happy when there's experience there. Bruno Sparky came back with De Giga and Cornelius for him. What way would you go?
I mean, it's so difficult, because we've seen how good John Suter can be. I thought John Suter had a really good year last year, given the amount of problems we had last year and the amount of different players he had played next to him last year. It wasn't ideal, was it, in all honesty? I really like John Suter. I think he's a really good player. I agree with what you said. I think possibly being next to somebody like Cornelius would be a good thing for him, especially the fact that allows him to play on his right side, which is where he wants to be, obviously. But then again, another argument would be, well, we've obviously paid a decent loan fee to Wolves for Giga. So it'll be interesting to see who the manager goes with. If I'm totally honest, the fact that it's Hearts and Hibs, I would be playing Suter, because he knows the two teams very well. He knows the kind of players that we're up against, and it maybe allows it to be a little bit easier for Cornelius that he's got Suter next to him in those two games. If you get in there with Giga and him, that could be a problem, given that obviously Giga doesn't really know those two teams, and neither does Cornelius. Yeah. So I feel like it's important that Suter plays next to him. I mean, that's not to say he will, because Russell Martin's done a lot of strange things so far since he's come in terms of some of the selections. So, I mean, and as we've already touched on, he could go to a 5. He could go to a 5 if we then allow, the wing backs to be much higher up the pitch, to do a little bit more damage down the side of the pitch. It would allow us to play a front two, which people have obviously touched on a little bit with our recent signings. So yeah, I mean, these are things that obviously we can look at, we can work on the international break with the players that are obviously still in the building. So yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of changes ahead of that game. I would like to think that the same with Raskin, when Raskin comes back and he has this sit down with Felwell and Russell Martin, that see at the end of the day, see whether Russell Martin and Nico Raskin like each other, that's irrelevant in all honesty, because we need our best players out in the pitch, and Nico Raskin's one of those players. So maybe it's one of these ones where there has to be an agreement, because at the end of the day, if Nico Raskin's not playing, then it devalues him and it weakens our starting 11. Whereas if he's in the team, he's playing well and we're winning, it helps his value stay at a decent amount. So if Rangers are having to sell him in January or next summer, there is still a way of getting good money for him. Whereas if he's sitting in the sidelines and he's not doing anything, and it's a petty wee squabble between a manager and a player, and our best players sitting in the stand, not even in the starting 11 or on the bench, it's not really helping anybody, is it, to be totally honest with you?
No, we need Raskin back in there. Like I say, he was our best player last year, and there was a reason why he was. I think that you get what you hear from the media, you get what you hear from parents, because his dad has weighed in, and you get all these little stories, and in the middle of all of that somewhere is the actual truth. So we'll probably never know the full expect of it was.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. Like, you always hear bits and bobs, but the reality is the only people that will know the truth is the people that were actually there with whatever happened. But to me, in a lot of ways, it shows that maybe the manager's not quite as tough as he should be. Because see, at the end of the day, see when things aren't going well, I think it's fair that some players come up and go, you know what, this isn't good enough. You know what, we're not playing well enough, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. And see, at the end of the day, see, regardless of what you think as a manager, surely you've got to have the best team out in the pitch for every single game. Because that's got to be the paramount importance for these type of games upcoming for us. We have to get Raskin in the team. He's got to start against Hearts. He's got to start against Hibs. Because I think so far we've not seen anywhere near enough for Joe Rothwell. We need to see a hell of a lot more from him. I feel like that's something that needs to be worked on during this international break, whether that's his fitness, because sometimes he looks like he's kind of buggered after 50, 60 minutes, doesn't he? He looks like he's really struggling in games. And
he was sat on the bench against Celtic and he's still looked out of breath.
Yeah, and it's, for a guy that's obviously played at a very good level for a far amount of his career, it's slightly disturbing that he's come up here and looked quite a bit off it, to be honest. I'm lucky, obviously, one of the guys that goes in my supporters bus, he's, been going to watch Leeds now for the last few years when he gets the opportunity. And he was, the Leeds fans were raving about Rothwell last year, how good he played, how important he was to that team, how he used the ball, his ability to spread the game, to pick out the right pass, good striker of a ball. We've not really seen a lot of that since he's come up to Rangers.
No.
And I would imagine, yet again, for all we probably didn't pay much of a fee for him, kind of reportedly between 500,000 and 800,000, you would imagine he's on a pretty good salary up here. And it's important that the players that we're paying those salaries to are hugely important in how the team are playing. And you would have to say the two guys that have come in Max Aarons and Rothwell, who I would imagine are on pretty good salaries, none of those two have particularly looked like they should be starting for Rangers right now. And you could argue against Hearts and Hibs, none of the two of them should be. No, and that to me is a little bit worrying, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that is. Because we've all said that Tav although he's been the servant and he's done stuff, and again, one of those things that I say that once he's gone, you'll realise what Tav brought. But Aarons was supposed to come in and take away the strain from Tav so that Tav didn't have to play as much. And at the moment, it just looks like he's going to carry on playing because he's better than Aarons in his position. Rothwell, he's trying to shoehorn. At the start, he tried to shoehorn him into the position and have Raskin on the pitch and change what Raskin does. That didn't work. They should sit out. Those two should come in. Hopefully, we get Lyle Cameron fit again because I know he had that knock after the Bruges game and missed the Celtic game. But then that gave the emergence to Conor Barron. So,
no, look, I mean, fair play to Conor. I think there was a lot of head scratching inside the stadium when they announced that Conor Barron was obviously starting. But I thought Conor had a really good game. I think those type of games suit Conor. See where a lot of the time there's a lot of intensity in the game and there's a lot of pressing and a lot of that kind of movement about the pitch. I think that suits Conor. I think in a lot of ways he's better without the ball because of his energy to get up and down the pitch. And I think, again, you need players like that in the squad, mate. You need guys that can come in. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Lyle Cameron. I really think he's a terrific wee player, and I think he's somebody that when he's fit, he should certainly be in and around that starting 11 more than not. I like the way that he plays the game. I like the way that he gets forward. He can play in a couple of different positions, which is helpful for us. He's a goal threat, as we've seen. Look, I know, this sounds totally stupid, right, when you actually say it, given how we've started the season, but I actually like that we've got a lot of different players within the squad that offer different things.
Yeah.
So in reality, see, when you look at this squad, I mean, if you look at our midfield, for instance, right, you look at Joe Rothwell, Nico Raskin, Mo Diamande, obviously Lyle Cameron, Conor Barron, obviously Barami can obviously drop in there as well. You could actually name another one or two guys that could drop in and out of that midfield. Those guys should be more than good enough to control most games in Scotland. And you should be doing a lot more damage. When you look at the width we've got in the team, Mike Kimura, Oliver Antman, Jedi Gasami, you've also got Finlay Curtis. You know, I think obviously Chermiti can obviously play a little bit off that side of the pitch as well. You know, you could even play, again, like sort of Diamandi can play off one side, sort of Lyle Cameron can play off a side as well. So when you look at the options the manager's got, that squad that has been built over the summer, on top of some of the players we had last season, there's really not an excuse for not playing better and winning games of football. Yeah, so I think, you know, like at the end of the day, this is down to the manager now to get the selections right and to get the best out of these players. Because, see, at the end of the day, it's going to be him that's going to lose his job. It's not going to be this squad of players. And that's, I mean, that is the brutal part of football. So it's up to the manager now to say, look, the transfer window's done. Yous are all here until January. Let's get stuck in about it, and we need to start winning games of football. If you're winning and Rangers are doing well, there's less pressure on me, there's less pressure on you, there's less nonsense in all the newspapers and online and in social media. Let's get back to what we should be doing, which is winning games of football, playing well, scoring goals, keeping clean sheets. Let's do the basics well. These are all things that need to happen now. You know, they've got to happen, mate. Because see, at the end of the day, nobody wants to keep seeing managers getting sacked every 12 months because that's where we've been. It's totally unacceptable that things keep going the way they're going. And I'm sure the new ownership don't want to have to sack the guy that they spent so long trying to get into the building. But at the end of the day...
And it's not something we're used to either as a club. We're not used to going through this amount of managers so quickly. I mean, up until Gio being the first one to get the sack, was it 18 managers up to that point? And we're quickly doubling that. So we don't want to be doing that.
Yeah, and I don't want us to be like every other football club that's just constantly sacking managers. Like, that's one thing I really, really hate about modern football now. You know, I really dislike that side of the game. Because I do believe you've got to give managers time to build squads, because things don't happen overnight. I mean, like, speaking to a lot of the guys that I go to the games with, guys on the supporters bus at the academy games, etc., nobody thought it was going to change overnight. I don't think anybody did. We knew it was going to take a bit of time and a bit of patience. But I think what we all expected that we would see is a bit more of a system and a style and a bit of intensity, that we would score some goals, that we would be more creative. We've not really seen a lot of that, and I think that's where a lot of the criticisms come from so far. So we really need to settle down and I think as we saw in the Celtic game, for all Celtic weren't great and neither were we. I thought we did a lot of the basics well in that game, and that should be a baseline for how we can play defensively. But we need to show more on the offensive side of the game, don't we? We need to create more chances, get more shots off. And I do believe Miovski is a very good signing for us. I do think he is the sort of guy that can get us 20 plus goals this season.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely could take the mantle that Dessa's left behind. Not a problem at all. But now, as we've sort of touched on the international break, we did cover Multiple Man's questions. We don't have to worry about that anymore. But thanks for the question, Multiple Man. As it is the international break and we don't have every player away on international duty, we have a under-19s game coming up, as you've already alluded to. Is there anybody in our current squad who isn't away on international duty who could play under-19s, just to get some minutes in them, get them up to speed a little bit more, because you can have overage players in these games, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there is obviously some guys that still haven't had the minutes. I mean, I don't know how much time the first team will have been given off after the Celtic game. I would imagine they would get a good 3, 4, 5 days off, potentially. But I think the obvious ones, when you look at it, would be guys like Leon King, guys like Xander Hutton, would be obvious to get some minutes. I mean, you could even argue there's some guys in and round about the first team that maybe haven't seen the minutes that they should have done. And I mean, like, it certainly will be interesting because we've obviously lost quite a few players to international duty with the younger age group. So it does mean we are going to be a little bit short. You know, because obviously Ryden Maguire would normally play in that game. He's not about. Alfie Halliwell's away with Scotland, so it'll be interesting to see what goalkeeper starts. And you've got Lewis Stewart that's away, Max Cameron's away, Ben Hutton's away. These are all guys that would have probably been in and round about that squad that would have played tomorrow against Queen of the South. So I'm intrigued to see who actually is in the squad and who's starting. But I would think we will see a couple of overage players playing tomorrow in that game, because I think it's a necessity, to be honest, given that we could be extremely young in some parts of the pitch.
Yeah, so there's a few players. I mean, Ntiala is still part of the club, as far as I'm aware. He hasn't gone anywhere yet, so he can get minutes. I would be for bringing Ntiala back into the squad, but that could be a subject for another day. What players do you think will actually be wasted? Maybe that's for next week when Martin comes back. I will just drop something in that's been popped into our group chat. It's not good news, and it's not a Rangers thing, so you can keep that calm. But Buckingham Palace have just announced the death of Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Kent. So the Duchess of Kent has died today. I know they're the royal family, but not everybody's cup of tea. I know that, but you got to feel from at a time when they lose a member of the family. So everything goes out to them and the loss of the Duchess of Kent. I will have to do some housekeeping before we disappear as well, because Wilf and the women's show guys and girls are back tonight for an impromptu show, as there's been a lot of ins and outs in the women's team recently. So they're going to come in tonight and smash that back up so you can get all up to date with everything on the women's show. That'll be at 6:30 tonight, I believe, is what he told me. I'll just double check because I don't want to have you tuning in half an hour too late and they've already finished or whatever it is. Yep, at 6:30 tonight. And after that, no Friday Night Rabble anymore. That is no longer a thing. But the Extreme Gaming Podcast will be out tonight as well for those of you who are into all things gaming. I don't think I'll get away with being able to have the Scotland game on for a bit. The Canada, I've turned on Martin, Canada game on for a little bit. And then say, oh, by the way, I'm just going to watch a podcast about gaming. I think I might get divorced by the end of the night if I try that one.
Yeah, you know what really disappointed me? I saw the new Football Manager 26 is due to come out, and I saw that the spec of the laptop or the computer that you need to play it. And I was thinking, I don't know what type of laptop you're going to need now just to play Football Manager. To me, what it always was a bit of fun for people, wasn't it?
It was.
To be able to enjoy it. Now it feels like you need to have £1,000 laptop just to be able to play it, which that's not the point of Football Manager. I think what they're gradually doing is taking the game away from what it was supposed to be.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I think they had the year's gap because they didn't have one for this year.
Yeah, because I think they messed up a lot of the graphical things. I don't think they thought that it was going to be such a big change to the game. But when you look at the graphics on like the one that we're able to play at the moment, which is 2024, because 2025 was skipped. When you've seen some of the new graphics for 2026, I mean, it does look very impressive. But see, the reality is, Football Manager's more about the technical side of the game, isn't it? The tactics and the setups and the training and all that. Like, that's part of the fun of the game. I feel like maybe they're taking the game in a totally different direction from what it originally was. And you're like, I'm not going to go out and buy a brand new laptop just so I can play Football Manager. Like, that just seems a bit ludicrous, in all honesty. But I'll certainly catch up on the gaming one later on, because I'm sure there'll be a few people not too happy about some of the things that's come out with Football Manager. It feels like they're just taking it in a different direction.
We'll see if they've talked about it on this one, because it is relatively new news, so it might be the week after. But it would be worth having a little look to see what's going on. They go all technical in depth on the Extreme Gaming podcast as well, which is amazing. I love it. I'll just get it on the PlayStation. I'm sure it'll still work.
All the simpletons, that's what I like as well, mate. I'm one of those old school guys. I grew up with like a Nintendo and a Super Nintendo and the Game Boy and Sega Mega Drive and stuff like that. I mean, I'm still old enough to remember all of those things. I mean,
Commodore 64 was my first.
Oh, I think my brother had one of those, actually. I think he had, and what was it you called it again? Was it an Atari?
Oh, the Atari. Well, that was the first one we used to put the things in, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a big brown box, wasn't it? And it had like the mad like gaming thing. You had to like pure like sort of pull it all over the place just to get the car to move about 2 centimeters or something like that. And I know, like I said, we grew up in that era, didn't we? We had all the craziness and all the. I mean, everything was so bulky back then. I remember, like when I get my first ever mobile phone, it was about that size. Like you had to pull like the aerial cord out, and it was like touching like it was crazy back there. And it's funny when you tell like some of the younger generation about stuff like that, because they just look at you like you're talking absolute nonsense.
When I grew up, we only had 4 channels. What?
So did I, mate. You're right. That's exactly what we had with Channel 1 to Channel 4. Melbourne Channel 5 came out, people were like, we've got a 5th channel.
Amazing. And then, no, actually, it's not. It's crap.
Yeah. The good times.
We could carry on forever and ever. And that's we're encroaching into random rabble territory, which will be at the weekend as well. So we'll keep an eye out for that watch along. It may be on. I can't confirm it. I don't know. It hasn't been confirmed in our chat. So just keep an eye out for it. Look out for the notifications. But the Women's Show back at 6:30 and the Extreme Gaming Podcast, as far as I'm aware, is out tonight. But for that, I think we've done enough. I'm considering I didn't think we'd get enough for 20 minutes. We've done all right. So
yeah, I think we've done well, mate. 37 minutes, a bit of fun, answering some questions and talking about anything other than Rangers, which is always a good thing from time to time.
Yeah, especially at the moment. But thank you to everybody in the chat. I know there was a lot of questions in there. I didn't get to all of them, but it's not meant to be an hour show. So thank you. We'll get to just keep putting those questions in next week when Martin comes back. But for now, I will not use Martin's tagline. I will just do my own, where I will see you somewhere else.